I'm Becky McCoy, and you're listening to Stories of Unfolding Grace, the podcast about grace during unexpected times. You'll hear from real people dealing with hard stuff, and I hope you'll feel encouraged that you can bravely live through hard stuff too. You're listening to episode 2 of Stories of Unfolding Grace. I got a chance to chat with Lexi Behrndt of Scribbles and Crumbs and the Oncoming Alive project. You can find the show notes at beckylmccoy.com/02. I'm here with Lexi Behrndt, and she is the founder and writer at Scribbles and Crumbs. So why don't you tell us a little bit about a difficult season that you experienced?
Oh, that's a loaded question. So a difficult season that I experienced, I guess the shortest Cliff Note version would be that I was married and was, I had one kid and was pregnant with my second boy. And when I gave birth to my second boy, he was born sick. And so the long story short is that Charlie, so my second son, he lived in the hospital. He was born with congenital heart disease, and then he developed secondary pulmonary hypertension that was really, 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 really bad. And so he lived in the hospital at Mott Children's Hospital in Ann Arbor, Michigan for his entire life. So that was 6 months and 17 days. And so he passed away. And it was, obviously that was forever the biggest heartbreak.
Yeah.
Was having, losing him. Living in the hospital was hard, but then losing him. And then I was in a really, really unhealthy marriage, just very toxic and hurtful and abusive. And I gained the courage to really kind of get out after that. And so it was months of a lot of like turmoil and a lot of really hard things. And it took a lot of like bravery just to, get out of bed every day.
Totally.
And thankfully so it's like an understatement. But yeah, no, it's been so crazy, but it's been, I'm really over a year out from all of that, and it's just like nothing. I never imagined I'd be in the place that I am now.
Right. So
yeah.
So your story is kind of similar to mine in that all of these gigantic changes happened all at the same time.
At once?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And
I moved across the country too. So let's just add that into the pot.
Yeah. So many changes. So how, in the midst of all these changes, how did you react emotionally?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think that the biggest thing for me that really, my saving grace was my faith. So funny story, most people don't know this, but I went to school to be a pastor. And so that's what I have my degree in. And so that's not what built me on a solid foundation of faith, was getting my degree in it, but just going through my difficulties in my marriage, and then just some like run-ins with like really big bouts of anxiety and stuff, just really taught me to rely on God. And really, it's how I see it is going through like a great deal of things before Charlie. It like fused Jesus to my core, is what it feels like. So I was raised as a pastor's kid, actually. And so I had always been in church and had known about God, but it really, that going through suffering is really what gave me my footing. And so when I went through all of these other things and had to deal with them, and it was just one after another, I already knew that God was good no matter what I faced. And so I already knew that I could trust him. And if everything else pointed to, like, don't trust him. He's not taking care of you, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, even if, like, everything human within me was like, Lexi, like, this is, like, crazy. This is hell.
Right.
I knew that So it's like I already knew him. Like, I already knew who God was, and I already knew his character, and I already knew that he was good despite everything. And, you know, even if my life never got better, and even if it continued on this horrible path for forever, that he was still good, and that my promise was in heaven. And, like, you know, like, my promise is him, and it's not having an easy life. And so having that as my foundation, going through everything, that's really what, you know, that's what helps me survive. But then so emotionally speaking, I just kind of was, I don't know, I kind of felt like I was a little bit numb for a while. And just, like, dealing with everything. Like, you know, when you're in survival mode, you can only handle so much. And so, handling the onslaught of, like, all of your emotions and feelings at once, it's, like, my counselor tells me, like, Lexi, like, when you were, like, feeling numb, it's because you had to, because you couldn't take all of it at once.
Right.
And so I've come out on the other side of that now, and that's really what, like, this whole, like, this new project that I started, the Oncoming Alive project, is about, is just, like, you know, going through suffering, but then also, like, facing the hard stuff so that you can also see the good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lot. So what did you struggle with most in the seasons? Like, how did you handle it, for better or for worse? What was your response?
Right, yeah. Well, first of all, I wanted to turn to a lot of, like, ice cream, a lot.
And, that's awesome.
Just, like,
we're big ice cream fans in this family.
Ice cream and, like, chips and queso, and just, like, trying to, I don't know, I think that the biggest thing for me was wanting to avoid the hard stuff. And just, like, I don't know, I'm a big person, like, who, like, I can, like, deflect a lot of things with humor. Which you wouldn't, like, be able to tell that from my writing, ironically. But so I just, like, prefer in everyday life, I just prefer to, like, not have to say things by just using humor.
Right. I'm totally the same way, so I'm tracking with you.
Yeah. See, it's like this, like, really dark sense of humor that you get when you go through a lot of hard stuff.
Yeah.
And so, so this is my life. And so probably my most the unhealthiest thing probably was trying to run and hide from everything, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So just by deflecting with humor, or by, like, trying to push through everything rather than just actually just sitting in it, because sometimes I think the healthiest thing that we can do is just face it and just, like, sit in the crappy, really crummy, really deep parts that, you know, like, that we have to face it and we have to feel it in order to really move through it.
Which is totally terrifying, right?
Yes, it's totally terrifying,
Yeah.
especially when, like, you know, you can just make a, like, really good joke about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's definitely the harder path. But it's, you know, my counselor reminds me that it's really good to face it, to be able to move through it. And it takes a lot of bravery and courage to face the hard things. Like, even when you're in the midst of them, having to, like, face them emotionally rather than numbing yourself or deflecting, you know, it's the courageous thing to do, and it's the healthiest thing to do. And you can't really get to the other side if, you know, ultimately the other side for us is heaven.
Right.
But, like, you can't get through it and, like, out through the fog, or at least, like, start making headway until you start facing it. At least that's my experience.
It's so true. After my dad passed away, I was in denial for probably 2 years. Like, there was some really serious hiding from the grief. And
yes, exactly. Yeah.
And so when Keith passed away, it was like, no, I'm not doing that again, because I was so much more miserable when I avoided it. Choosing to live bravely and authentically is important to me, and I'm guessing it's something you are interested in too. You can learn more about my story at my blog, beckylmccoy.com. Stop by and sign up to receive my monthly newsletter. It includes all sorts of interesting tidbits and family updates. Check the show notes for details. I'd love your help with something. If you're enjoying Stories of Unfolding Grace, please share it with your friends and subscribe in iTunes. If you leave a rating, it'll help other listeners to find the podcast. Thanks so much for being on this journey with me. In what ways, I'm using this kind of super basic definition of grace as being when good things show up during really hard times. So in what ways was grace apparent during those couple of years for you?
Oh my gosh. So I think the biggest gift that I had was the ability to see it through it all. I was never, I don't know, I think I can sometimes be like an obnoxious, unfailing optimist. But I really think that it was a gift in those times, because even when Charlie was in the hospital and when we would, living in a pediatric cardiothoracic ICU, it was like this like constant up and down and like all of these things happening and just like so much turmoil and so much going on all the time. And so just like really being able to see the good in all of that, like, you know, just saying like, oh my gosh, he did not die today, which sounds so horrible to say out loud.
No, I've been like, there really though. Like, yeah. like I am so thankful that even if everything else went wrong today, like even if we got these like, you know, bad echocardiogram results or bad, like, you know, if his blood pressure plummeted a few times, or like if all of these things happened and we had to go up on medication, you know, X, Y, and Z happened, like at least he's still here with me. Like at least I get at least one more day. And so I think that's really been how grace has been evident. It's just being able to see that in the midst of all of it. Like even if nothing gets better, like at least like there's all of these good things still in my life and still apparent, even when it's hard as hell. And even when it's, you know, it's just really brutal, there's always something good to see and to hold on to. And I think that's probably been my biggest gift of grace, was being able to see it, you know, in the midst of all of that. Yeah, definitely. Because you could have gone through it and not been able to see anything good. And I can't even imagine how much higher your stress level would have been.
Exactly. Yeah. So just like really celebrating any little victory through everything, even if it's like, oh hey, like, you know, going through all of this, it's like, hey, at least I showered today, like
right.
At least like this happened, and it's just like, you know what, like that's enough for me for right now.
Right.
So
how have you chosen to live bravely and authentically as a result of experiencing all these things?
Well, I hope that I'm living bravely and authentically. I'm certainly trying, just by like sharing our story and by trying to, I guess really by trying to like be a cheerleader for others and by trying to love them and who they are and where they're at. So that's kind of what I try to do with writing and with like the different projects that I have, and just, you know, really just like interacting with people. So, you know, I'm not one to ever say that I'm like doing everything right or to think that I have it down or, you know, that just any of those things. But I think that I'm certainly trying to, and I'm learning a lot about what it means to be brave and authentic and just to really truly love other people. That's what, you know, that's one of the biggest things that suffering has shown me, is that like everyone needs love. And I really think that everyone is, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people are waiting for someone else to be brave enough to say the hard things and go first.
Yes.
Because they're waiting for someone to say it, so then they can be like, oh my gosh, me too.
Right.
Like,
totally.
Finally someone said it, because now I can say it too.
Yep.
And so I kind of feel like that's one of my callings in life, is to like suck it up and like throw myself in front of the bus and be like, okay, I'll go first, even if like this makes me sound like a horrible person, or even if, you know, no matter what people think of me, like I'll just do it, because someone out there somewhere is feeling the same way and they need someone else to be brave enough to say it first.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if that is like bravery or stupidity, but
oh no, it's totally
something.
I get it, because I felt the same way too after Keith passed away. Like, okay, now it's my mission to just keep sharing my story, whether or not I want to, and you have to say yes every single time someone asks. And of course, there are times when I'm like, oh, can I say no? Please let this be the time I can say no.
Yes.
Because it's terrifying sometimes, but.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Like you said,
100%,
people feel more comfortable and free to share when somebody else does it first.
Yes.
How would you encourage someone, if someone came up to you and had a child with a really difficult diagnosis or was in a marriage that wasn't healthy or productive, they had all these different similar things going on, how would you want to encourage them?
That's so funny, because ironically, this has happened at least 5 times.
Wow.
So with those people, I just kind of like want to adopt them. And
yeah.
So those are the people that, like, you know, I can't have this like super personal relationship with everyone.
Right.
But I really try to like follow up with them, because I know, you know, I can never understand their exact situation, and we're always going to have differences, but like, I know what it feels like to go through that. And I didn't have anyone when I was going through it that I knew had been through something similar. And that's what I needed to know. It's like, okay, like I needed someone to say to me, Lexi, you can make it through this.
Yep.
Like, Lexi, like it feels like hell right now, and it feels like you're never going to get through. But I promise you, give it like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years down the road, and you're going to look back and you're in a totally different place. And you're going to think like it's a miracle that you're there. But, like, hold on until then, because it's going to be really hard, and it might get even harder, but you can do this no matter what happens. And then especially if people share my faith, then I'm able to talk to them on a different level and be like, look, Jesus is still good no matter what. And even if things never get better in this lifetime, we can still hold on to the hope of heaven, and that someday, you know, we're promised that we're going to be there, and you know, even if nothing gets better here, we have heaven. We have heaven to look forward to, and that is where our promise is. And so just really being, which is so, you know, it's not the popular thing to say.
Yeah.
It's like slightly morbid, like, hey, life could possibly never get better.
Right.
But even if it doesn't get better, we can still hold on, and there's still hope, because someday it will, when we have the promise of heaven.
That's so true. So many people, one of the things I get most, because the last 10 years of my life have been full of so many kind of crappy things. One of the things I get most is, well, it has to get better for you now. And I just look at people and I say, well, who says so? Because first of all, that's not biblical. Like, there is no promise anywhere that says it's going to get better. Actually, it says the opposite. But my hope isn't in that anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Right, yes. And I think that there's an art of learning to live with the acceptance that life really could never get better. And then you just cope with that. And suddenly you start seeing like the beauty in it. And you start seeing like what you're saying, like you start seeing like unexpected graces in that. Like at one point I had to be like, okay, God, even if things never get better, I need you to show me how to serve you in spite of that.
Right.
You know, even if it stays like this level of hell until I die and I get to heaven, like I still need you to help me learn how to live, but not just live, but learn how to serve you in that and to show others love in that. Because, you know, there's like a point where you get where it's really debilitating and you just feel paralyzed because the suffering is so severe.
Yep.
And just learning, you know, and that's what grace does. I think, at least in my life, that's what grace has done for me.
So let's like plug On Coming Alive real quick here. Why don't you tell everyone about this awesome project?
Okay, so On Coming Alive, I came up with this idea, this crazy idea. I just started having this like kind of itch to do something, and I felt this burden, like I need to do something more than what I was doing with just writing, which it's not just writing, like don't get me wrong, but I personally felt like I needed to do something more and take it a step further. And so I was praying about it and really thinking about it for a few months, and I can't even tell you the full evolution of it because honestly I don't even remember how it completely evolved.
Yeah.
But it turned into this huge project. So on February 15th, we released it, and it was 72 stories of rising from the ashes and coming alive. And so I specifically wanted to start it with people who have lost a loved one, only because that's the birthplace of it for me. Mm-hmm. And I just have this idea that the people who write about grief, and even if, not all of these people are writers, but people who write about grief so often can be put into a corner because people don't want to go there. Like, they don't want to think about a child dying or a spouse dying, or, they don't want to think about suicide, and they don't want to think about all of these other things. So while I had been writing for a year for these bigger sites, I noticed that mostly the only people who read the things that I wrote in them were people who had also lost a loved one. Mm. And so it's just like, man, like, I just see so much richness in all of these people that I know who are writers and who aren't writers. And there's so much wisdom that comes through suffering, especially suffering through the loss of a loved one. And there's so much wisdom in that the whole world, like, there are universal concepts that apply to anyone, no matter what they've suffered. So I wanted to launch it with people who have lost a loved one, because I think that so often our voices are put in a corner, that I wanted to bring them out of that. Right. And I wanted to use them and their stories to teach the rest of the world, and to use that as a launching pad to invite other people, no matter how they have suffered, no matter if it's like, depression, mm-hmm. or chronic illness, or if it's, addiction or abuse, or there's stories of childhood abuse, there's stories of domestic violence, all of these different things, and so many more. Just no matter how people have suffered, they can read these stories and be inspired, and they can join in this movement on coming alive. And so it's not about the absence of pain either, and that's something that I've tried to explain to people. Yep. On coming alive, like, the project isn't about not feeling pain, because especially when you've lost a loved one, we're forever going to have this void in our lives where they should be.
And that's what one of them was or the other day, about how that hole will always be there, but your life just expands around it.
Yes, exactly. And that's the thing, is even if it never gets better, even if life always has pain, there can also be joy in it too. Mm-hmm. And that's really the full concept. And so I didn't put a timeline on when people could share their stories. So it's not like only if it's been 5 years post whatever for you. Right. Like, I wasn't going to do that, because the thing is that the beauty of the raw stories, where it's only been months for some people, the beauty is that they're in the deep darkness, but they can still see patches of light. Yeah. And that's what I wanted to show people, is that no matter how deep your darkness is, and no matter how much you feel like you can never get out, you can still find the tiny patches of light and then cling like hell to those. Right. And then that will care for you too. So that's this whole concept, and it's like nothing. It's not any romantic concept, and it's not anything that's like, going to put a smile on the whole world's face. But for people who have known suffering, it's something that we all need. Is like, there is hope, even in the times where hope seems like the most affable concept.
Absolutely, definitely, and I think it's so amazing that our two projects were developing like in parallel to one another, and have this same, like, suffering is universal. Let's stop comparing. Let's stop quantifying it, and let's just like get together and help each other through.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have some fun questions for you now.
Okay.
So the first one is, what are you loving right now? What gets you really excited?
Oh, man. So a lot of things. So that's going to be really hard to narrow down, because now I have in my mind about this project. So from that standpoint, I am loving the fact that, like, so many of us are uniting. Like, I love when we can come together and all support each other. And, everyone has unique skills and talents. And just when we can all come together and use those, it's incredible what can happen. Yep. And then also, I am loving, I only really have like two major aspects of my life right now, because I'm so busy all the time. But, I love, like, time with my son. So I have a little 3-year-old. He's 3 right now. So his name's Lincoln. And of course, like, the week that the project launched, he decided that he was finally ready to be potty trained. And so I know. So that happened. But yeah, no, just all of the things. He's in this like super fun stage, and so he just with like all of his talking, and he's like very into explaining things right now. And
yeah, Caleb
so it's
is too.
He's the one. Yes, I love his explanations for these things. So and then when I did this project, he was like, "Mommy, I need to do a project too." And so now he has like all of these little projects that he's doing at the same time. And so we keep going out to celebrate because also I have had no time to cook or anything.
I love that. Yeah, let's not call it Mom can't get her act together. Let's call it a celebration.
I know. Exactly.
Awesome.
So, yep.
Okay.
Yes, exactly.
So there's a good segue. What's your favorite meal right now?
Oh my gosh, that's a good question. When I get a chance, I'm all about vegetarian sushi. Which is so funny because I hate fish or anything, but I just tried it for the first time ever.
Okay.
Either that or always chips and queso.
Okay. What are you doing to take care of yourself?
Oh man. Well, so aside from these past 2 weeks, can we say that?
Sure.
Aside
totally.
from these past 2 weeks, I've just been really, and in general, I've just been really trying to take, to take a lot of breaks when I need to, and just really trying to learn to listen to my body, but then also listen to, just like what I'm feeling. And I, and with writing and stuff, that takes a lot too, because I also work full time. And so, there were whole months, I've only been writing for like 16 months now. And there were whole months where I never wrote a single thing. Like I just didn't, because I knew that I needed a break. And, so just like trying to live like that, like it's taken me a lot to learn to take breaks because I'm very much a worker bee. And that was kind of how I was coping in a lot of ways, was going into overdrive with stuff and just really wanting to build a legacy for Charlie. And so I learned that like I have to take time for myself, but then I also have to take time for things that I like to do. Like, I'll buy like these like little like facial packets at Target and stuff. Like, just do stuff like that, because I don't have time for anything else. And so just like trying to do things that I like, or like, sometimes like I'll binge watch Netflix and stuff like that when Lincoln goes to sleep. But,
yeah, totally. And you said something the other day that struck me too, is that you don't respond to Facebook messages right away. Like you dedicate time to do that later, because otherwise you could spend the whole day doing that.
I know. Well, yeah. So my problem is that deep down I am a pure people pleaser, and I hate that Facebook messages people can see that you've read it.
Yes, I know. Me too. I hate that so much.
And so I feel so bad if I can't respond to people right away. So I just will like hide from them for a little while until I have time to actually sit down and write replies. So it's kind of a problem. I guess that's a good thing to do. I haven't thought of it that way, but it's more so just I don't want people to think that I'm just ignoring them when really it's just very busy and I don't always have time to sit down and thought out replies or anything like that.
I think it's an awesome boundary.
That's good.
Yeah. Good. Okay, last question. What are you doing to be brave?
Sometimes I think that everything in my life that I'm doing takes bravery.
I would agree. I would agree with that answer.
So I feel like brave just has to be like my mode of living. And, so here's one thing. I just started saying yes to speaking engagements.
Awesome.
So here's the funny thing is I used to love to speak, and I used to get paid to speak at like conferences for teenage girls.
Okay.
So ever since Charlie was born, I said never again. And I said I would never again write, and I said I would never again speak.
Oh boy.
I said I would never again work in a church.
Whoops.
I know. So yeah, jokes on me. But actually, it's really I'm really afraid of doing it now. But it's realizing that like sometimes it's more important to get up there, even when you feel like, I don't feel like I'm a fancy person. I don't feel like I'm someone who has it all down. I don't feel like I'm someone that, I don't know. I just don't see myself in the way that you would think of other people who would be speaking. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but those are the people that we all love listening to, right? Wouldn't you rather listen to somebody in jeans and a t-shirt and
Yeah. Okay, well that's so good. That's so good because that's what I was telling someone, I don't have anything fancy to wear. I just am all I am is me, and all I have is my heart, and I don't have all these letters after my name. I don't have anything like that. But I am trying to be brave and say yes even when I doubt myself.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this stuff. I know that it's something that people are definitely going to be encouraged by, and I'll put the link to your blog and to Oncoming Alive in the show notes for people to get to. In the next episode, I talked to my friend Jennifer Chang about her parents' divorce.
None of my friends' parents were divorced, and so I never really thought that my parents would. I didn't see them get angry at one another or fight, so I didn't think it was going to happen. I had been going to the church for maybe a year or two, and I was listening to a sermon. Can't remember what it was about, but the pastor was talking about how much Christ loves us, and I was nodding along, and then I had a moment where I was like, holy crap, I actually believe this now.
If you're interested in sharing your story of unfolding grace, head to my blog, beckylmccoy.com, and click on the submissions button. I can't wait to hear from you. Thanks again for joining me. I'm really looking forward to next week.